that makes us human? What distinguishes human beings from all of the other creatures of the world? Is it the opposable thumb? Is it our penchant for language? Although some people have identified those as important aspects of being human, we know that really it's much greater and more important than those things. The foundational human experience is the experience of the value of persons as persons. That's also the foundational moral experience. It's also the reason why human beings, unlike other creatures as far as we can tell, ask questions like, what should I do? What ought I do? What's good? What's just? In those kinds of questions, what we're attempting to do is understand what befits persons as persons. How do we respond to the dignity, the inestimable value, the absolute preciousness, the amazing sacredness of persons as persons? Here's one poem in which I attempt to get at this fundamental difference for us as human beings. This is called First Question. Tell me, how did it begin? That first question. Some small space between instinct and act. Brief doubt. Glitch in the chemistry of synapse. Beyond the lizard brain. Did the soul happen then? In that tiny space of wonder? Like some cosmic chrysalis, lure of hope, push of pure light toward the next threshold of longing? Did the heart open its chamber of compassion? Did the eye recognize itself in the mirror of the other's face? I propose that this moment was the beginning of humankind. This moment of asking, what should I do? What does the preciousness of that other person require of me? How might I respond to that person's beauty, uniqueness, sacredness, immense, immeasurable value? How do we know that this is the beginning of humanness, that this is the heart of humanness? Can we prove it? It's not one of those important things that we can prove. Provable things in terms of physical proof, empirical provability are important, but most of the most important things in our lives are not provable like that. I mean, what proof did you have before you said yes to a spouse or a partner, right? Is there a calculation? X number of boxes of candy, X number of flowers, X number of saying, okay, we'll go to that movie, not the one I wanted to go to. Is there a calculation that adds up to, yes, I will commit my life to you? No, there isn't. That proof that we're looking for in a relationship is ultimately, it's a knowledge that comes from faith. Yeah. It's a knowledge, a deep knowing that comes from faith. Faith is a way of knowing. And when we say every other human person has inestimable worth, unimaginable dignity, inestimable value, we are making a statement of faith. A statement that requires a lifelong commitment to action, to response, to the embrace of all other human persons. Now, we must understand that this recognition of the value of persons is not something that's simply part of our genetic code. It's not something that gets passed on in our physical makeup. Rather, it is something that is a process in our human community. And so we are responsible to continue to deepen and broaden our understanding of the preciousness of persons, the value of persons. There are all kinds of indications that we're not doing too well. Although, when we look at the scope of human history, we're making some progress, right? Not too long ago, in many countries of the world, it was legal to own other persons as slaves. It isn't legal anymore in any country of the world. We're moving, right, in terms of the recognition of the value of persons of all genders or orientations. We're moving in terms of a deeper appreciation for the diversity of our human community. But we have, of course, so far to go. Sometimes those recognitions visit me in dreams. And this is a poem that comes out of a dream that I had of a meeting of the higher powers. And the central figure in this poem is the great mother goddess holding a dead child. Because we know that today, in the next 24 hours, almost 25,000 children in our human community will die. Meeting of the higher powers. Only the higher powers were called to the meeting with its one question: how can we open their eyes? Not because of the improvised explosive devices, although there are many of those. Not because of the high walls on the borders, even though we're creating more. Not because of the immigrants and refugees wandering the deserts and the hungry streets, even though there are more than ever. Not because of the white egret's wings oiled black and the rank rivers running with poison in the veins of the poor. Not because of all the names for God or the rights and rules to keep the others out. She was standing straight as a lightning bolt, her cheekbones brushed with dawn, and in her arms a child, without breath. Taut skin over the ribs and swollen belly, she kissed with such tenderness the small, lifeless body. Could the human brain, in its next evolution, escape its protective fear, its solitary illusion? Could the hands grow large again? Might these humankind hear the common heart drum in the common precious flesh? Could they learn again the art of bread? With faith, we know that every human child, every human person has inestimable worth. And it is our work to share the bread of life, the bread of hope, the bread of compassion. We have much to be hopeful for. It is quite clear that in every culture, in every religion, in every wisdom tradition of the world, those who give their lives, in small ways or large, are honored. The supreme sacrifice of laying down one's life for another, even though it's a kind of paradoxical thing that you would give up life for another life. That kind of act of courage and bravery and compassion is honored in every tradition, in every culture, everywhere, across the globe. And that's an indication that we, as a human community, we know in our deepest heart of hearts what every child and every person is. The fullness of a human life. And we all, too, have an experience of profanation. We have an experience often that something isn't humane. It isn't right. We have a deep, gut level knowing when we see children separated from their parents at the border. We know that's not right. And so many other things. We look, we see, we know. And our work is to share the bread so that all might have life. Around this time of the year, we think often of the biblical story of that small child, Jesus. And the scriptures tell us that there was a census. And we, of course, are approaching a new census, aren't we? And here's my reflections on, again, our challenge in this day to respond to that inestimable value of all persons. Census. Traveling to be counted, to belong, to be safe, to be home. This is the most familiar journey through outside or inside geography. The long and many miles to get to forgiveness, or crossing the desert of depression in endless thirst. The minutes and days and months sometimes, standing in one place, wondering if the next step is possible. The time behind bars, real or imagined. The quicksand of grief. For some, the journey goes from violence to violence, from hunger to hunger, from hope to tears. After hundreds or 1,000 miles on foot, sleeping on the dirt through shivering cold nights, and finally turned away at the border. Or worse, having to send the children across the bridge alone? Who decides who counts and what questions should be asked? Don't we know the common flesh, whatever color or hue? Don't we know the shared story that counts the hours beside the bed of the sick child, that counts the shallow breaths of the dying loved one, that counts the time between contractions, that counts the milligrams of medicine? So, my friends, let us listen to each story as holy word. Let us count each life, each precious life, as family. Each one as sacred, to be honored, to be welcomed, to be saved, to be embraced. Let's do that.